Hi, this is TapCat, and today I thought I would talk to you about analysis paralysis. Now, if you're not familiar with the term, it's probably mostly self-explanatory, but basically the idea is that you allow yourself to go so deep on trying to analyze a problem that you really just kind of end up chasing your own tail, going in circles, and not being able to come to a conclusion. Now, this certainly happens in games. So, for example, when I'm on a mission in XCOM 2, sometimes I think things through and come up with what I consider to be a good course of action. And sometimes I just end up kind of going down a rabbit hole where I'll say, well, if I do this, then the alien could do that. But if I do this other thing, then they could do another thing. And, depending if I miss my shot, then that would be bad. And, you don't get anywhere. You just keep imagining bad what if scenarios. Now, in games, I can usually find some way to break the tie. And if you've watched any of my series, you'll see sometimes what I'll do is I'll just intentionally do something that I wouldn't normally to see what happens, to learn something new. The reason I'm thinking about this right now is because I had a situation outside of gaming, and I thought I'd talk about it in the hopes that my experience might be of help to you. So recently, I decided I wanted to buy a new car. And I've been looking on and off for months. And I am the kind of person that when I make a major decision like that, a major purchase, I research the hell out of it. So, I'll go on Consumer Reports and Car and Driver and all of these different websites and read, different reviews. Now, one thing that was really making this difficult for me is I had a lot of different priorities that conflicted with each other in some ways. So, for example, I thought it would be cool if I could either stop buying gas altogether or that probably wasn't going to be practical, but let's say radically curtail the amount of gasoline that I use. So like a plug-in hybrid, was a possibility. I even looked at hydrogen cars. There's one or two of those out there. And, but at the same time, I also, one of the things that I was somewhat dissatisfied with my old car is that its power was okay, but if you needed to get on the freeway and it was a little crowded, it could be very difficult getting up to speed quickly enough. And if somebody didn't want to, let you come in, especially, it could be difficult passing on the freeway. So that's a good example. Fuel economy and raw power in an engine, they don't often go together. And so I'm not going to go into all the details because that's not really the point of this. But what I'm saying is this is one of the reasons I went in circles is because I didn't really know what I wanted, what was most important to me. And I tried to get at that. And usually what happens when I'm going to buy a car is I do all this research, I come up with a favorite, and then I go test drive it, I like it, and I buy it. And I hate being at a car dealer. That's another thing. I hate talking to salesmen. I hate going into the finance room. I hate all of it. So minimizing the time I spend there, that's a big plus. Okay, so why was this time different? Well, actually, the last time I bought a car, it wasn't too different. But what made this time really different for me is this. I finally narrowed it down. I said, okay, this car, this is the one I'm going to get. Let's go test drive it. So I go to the dealer, and unfortunately, what I found is that once I actually sat in the car, I could not get a comfortable seating position. Either my knees were jammed against the steering wheel, or if I pushed back far enough that wasn't happening, then I was kind of having to stretch my arms more than I wanted to reach the wheel. Then when I started going, I found when it was time to change lanes, looking to my left, the pillar between the doors was just literally right in my face. I could not see. It was like I didn't have a window. I had a wall to my left. So that was the end of that. The sad thing is the car to drive, other than that, was perfectly fine. But not being able to see out of the car is kind of a deal breaker for me. So I said, that's it. So this really upset all of my carefully researched plans. And when I came back and I started looking for a plan B, this is when I really entered this loop that I couldn't get out of, because car A has these virtues, but these shortcomings. And car B, had different strengths and different shortcomings. And I just could not make up my mind. What do I want? And I think the real point that I'm going to try to make here, there is one, is that sometimes you have to stop reading, you have to stop thinking, and you have to start experiencing things and feeling things. Some people, this is not a problem for at all. They could probably stand to do more research, right? But I'm one of those very analytical people. So what I ended up doing is, instead of saying, well, I won't go and do a test drive until I know what I'm going to buy, I had the radical notion that I would start driving more cars. This is a breakthrough, isn't it? So I did. And I went Friday night, couple of nights ago, and drove a car. And I really liked it a lot. And I thought, wow, I would be ready to buy this right now. But I said I would drive more, so, let me do that. So that night I didn't buy anything. The next morning I go out again. I drive another car. And I really liked that one. So now I have a whole new dilemma. It's not that I can't find a car to buy. It's that I have two cars I want to buy, and whichever one I say no to, I feel like I'm going to be sad. So I come back to the house. Actually, before I did that, I test drove another car, which I also liked a lot, but it had some things that allowed me to say, you know what, it's third of three. So we're going to set that one aside. Thank goodness. So I came back, and I tried to go back to what I was doing before. I started reading about the two, and I was comparing, like, what's their horsepower and what's their mileage and, their physical size, just trying to look at how much room it would take up in the garage, and basically a lot of nonsense, honestly, that in the end probably wasn't going to matter that much to me, because while they were different, those weren't the things that were going to make the difference. And so having reached a deadlock again, after spending hours looking at this crap, I had the radical notion to go out and look at the cars again. One reason for that is the car I had driven the first night, I hadn't seen the color during the day, and I wanted to. Because, of course, like all cars, it comes in many colors. And the one I thought I wanted, I hadn't seen in the daytime. And that's a pretty important thing to do. So I go and look at it. Now, once I went back out, after doing all of these drives and all this thinking and stuff, and I looked at that first car again, I knew in my heart that was the one. And just to be sure, I then went and looked at the second one, and I still liked it. I mean, when I saw it, I was like, oh, it's beautiful. But it just confirmed. That's all it did. I was like, no, I like the other one better. So, went back to the one dealership, and, basically we did that deal. So I won't go into any more detail on that, because again, this isn't actually about how to buy a car. But I think that whichever your standard mode is, so for me, I am prone to analysis paralysis, because I am a thinker. I am a researcher and a planner, and I dig into these things. And sometimes you have to frickin' shut your brain up and stop doing that and get out and just feel something, experience it. And then you know what you want, not what you think you want. Now, by the same token, there are people who buy a car because they saw one passing by on the street and that's all they know about it. And I think they could probably stand to do a little bit more research. But you know what? Hey, I'll leave that to them. So that's all. I'm not trying to make some point that's probably never been made before, but it's just a reminder that if you're like me and sometimes you get stuck in one of these loops, try something different. At least it worked for me, and there's at least a chance that it could work for you. And I think with that, rather than start repeating myself, I will wrap it up. So thanks for watching. I hope to see you next time.